Hello and welcome to this episode of Farm Connections. I'm your host, Dan Hoffman. On today's episode, we visit with Ruth Tibesar to discuss how agriculture saved her life and her mission to further mental health. We talked to Sarah Hart of ABC Drones about her company and how drones can improve farm practices, and the University of Minnesota Extension provides us with a new best practices segment. All here today on Farm Connections.
Welcome to Farm Connections with your host, Dan Hoffman.
Farm Connections made possible in part by
Absolute Energy. A locally owned facility produces 125 million gallons of ethanol annually, proudly supporting local economies in Iowa and Minnesota. Absolute Energy, adding value to the neighborhood. Minnesota Corn Growers Association, working to identify and promote opportunities for corn growers, enhance quality of life, and help others understand the value and importance of corn production to America's economy. EDP Renewables North America, owner-operator of Prairie Star and Pioneer Prairie Wind Farms, Minnesota and Iowa. EDPR wind farms and solar parks provide income to farmers and help power rural economies across the continent.
Welcome to Farm Connections. I'm your host, Dan Hoffman. With us today is Ruth Tibesar of Nicollet. Welcome, Ruth.
Well, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here today and talk with you.
Well, certainly someone that wears a crown and a banner across her chest must be wanting to share something about that. Can you?
Yes, this all occurred in June for me. A friend of mine told me about this organization, and it was right up my alley because I'm all about agriculture. And this agriculture and my life is so entwined that I want to share with as many people as possible what I have to tell.
Well, tell us about the crown.
The crown is a county crown. It's an appointed title, and I chose Nicollet County because that's where I'm from, and that's home. And I chose Nicollet County so I could get out there and talk to the farmers. I went to Farm Fest, which really was a good way to get out there and be with the people. That's what I want to do mostly with my platform.
Tell us about the selection process.
It's basically, like I said, it's an appointed title. The organization is United States Agriculture, and I'm in the elite group, and that means the old lady group. This goes many, many different divisions, but I'm in the elite group by my age. And in December, I will be competing for the Minnesota title, which I've been working for so often, thinking about December when I get out there now in July and the hot weather, that I would hopefully bring home the Minnesota title. And then I would be going on to the national title, which is in Orlando in June.
Well, for fun. You haven't always been from Nicollet County, though, right?
No, I worked in Rochester for 42 years at the Mayo Clinic in infectious disease. I loved my job. I did. I wish I always would have been in agriculture and went to school for that, but I went to school for a science degree.
Well, there's certainly a lot of science in agriculture, and it intertwines. So there you were in Rochester, Minnesota, and you're working for a large medical facility, world famous at that, and something changed?
Something changed in me a lot. About 10 years ago, the stress, just like farmer stress, was getting to me. And I ended up going down that deep, dark path, which the farmers are really, really realizing now. And I had to learn the most important thing was that there's so many things we don't have control over. And we need to find a way in our lives with our families how to control things when our minds start whirling. And that is the basis of what I'm trying to tell people.
You went down a deep path. Can you talk a little more about that if you choose?
I got into a very deep depression. I ended up in the hospital, treatments, many, many hours of therapy. But as I was released from the hospital, I was fortunate enough to go to my brother's farm. And at my brother's farm, I vastly improved when I would leave the clinical setting for my depression. It was the farm and the five senses, I always say, your ear, nose, throat, touch, and feel. It was that I finally realized that I had therapy at my fingertips. And I just let it use me. And it was free therapy, actually, compared to the Mayo Clinic, but it works. And I want to get out there and tell the farmers they have this therapy at their fingertips and they need to use it, because there's so many things we don't have control over.
Thank you, Ruth, for sharing that. You know, I had a friend, a professional friend once say, some people suffer from heart disease, some people suffer from other illnesses. And he said, in my case, he suffered from mental health issues. And so I think it was his way of saying heart issues are important, but so are mental health. And he also mentioned we can't always control what illness we get.
You're correct. That is so true. I mean, this is the last thing I would have ever wanted in my life. But I feel it was given to me now at my age that I am comfortable talking about it, and people are comfortable talking about it with me. I'm a very approachable woman. I love life now. I'm in remission, I'm glad to say. And I just want to share everything I learned those months in the hospital.
I think nationally, the statistics say that about 20% of any given population in our country are clinically depressed. So that's 1 of 5.
Yes, 1 of 5. That's correct. And it doesn't sound like, oh, big numbers, but it is. It truly is a big number when you look at the number of farmers that are out there and the number of coworkers I worked with. You'd be surprised. I worked with 25 people. How many people really came up to me and said, where do I go? What do I do?
And what did you tell them?
I said, first of all, you need to go to your family physician if it's very, very bad. But otherwise, I would tell them how I dealt with it and what I used in my life so they could use it. It would be a tool. It wouldn't be a diagnosis or anything. And I would tell them, this is what you need to do when it gets very severe. You need to reach out to the professionals. But if you think you can kind of get it a little bit under control, try my senses therapy, and you'd be surprised. It can ease your mind. It can ease your mind.
Tell us about that therapy and how it worked for you, please.
Well, I am fortunate enough. My brother is still on the farm. He will be the last generation. And he has a corn, bean, cattle farm. And I would get out to the farm, and the first sound that I liked the most when I got on the farm was the sound of his voice. It was as simple as hearing my brother's voice that made my heart jump and my blood pressure go down. And then it would be just standing in the middle of the farm and smelling the hay and hearing the cows moo. And now at this time of year, tasting the corn, tasting the vegetables, all these senses we have. But the one sense I always tell people don't do is, if you want to get the sense of touch, don't touch an electric fence. It's not any fun at all. I said, touch something else.
Very good advice. How long ago was that, Ruth?
About 10 years. And I still, it doesn't go away. It's something, if you're diagnosed with depression, you have. And it can come out of nowhere when you're doing well. And it's nothing you're doing. It's the chemicals in the brain. It's the stimulus around you. It's nothing you did personally to bring on depression. I just can't get that message across enough.
Well, certainly you were successful. You were professional. You had a great job. How did you know you were depressed?
I just couldn't move anymore. I felt numb. That's the word I always used with the doctors, was I was numb. I didn't find joy in anything at all anymore. Everything was a job. Everything was work. And even my family started to irritate me. I wanted to isolate. Isolation is the worst. You need to get out there in the public. Talking to other people really is advantageous when it comes to depression.
So you then took action and did what?
I went to the doctor and I got taken care of. And then when he started releasing me out of the hospital, I went to the farm, and that's where my program began. I started taking notes, writing down why am I changing? Why is my heart lifting? Why am I much happier? And that's how my platform kind of got put together.
So over the course of time, you took some notes and you probably saw some trends or some things that really made you say, this is what's helping.
Definitely. I noticed a big, vast improvement in my level of joy. I was happier and I was lighthearted. And once I got it through my head, I couldn't control the world. It was a benefit for me, and I wanted to share that with others. That was the thing. I wanted to share that with others. And I think the most that also I noticed was my brothers noticing of me improving. And there's nothing like a family member validating your health and knowing it's getting better.
Some accountability and feedback.
Yep, definitely.
And what advice would you have to people once they are wondering if they have some mental health concerns?
I would sit them down. This is my approach. I'm very approachable. I would sit them down, look them straight in the eye, and ask them how they're feeling. People forget feeling so often that they have feelings, and it's okay to have feelings, whether they are joyful, sad, happy, stressful. They can have those feelings. We just need to control them. So I would sit them down. I probably would take their hand in my hand. And that is my feeling of touch, to tell them that I really do care, and they're never alone. They're just never alone. There's so many people that just don't talk about it, but that's okay. That's their feeling. But I want to talk about it and make them feel comfortable talking about it.
Ruth, thank you so much for caring for others and reaching out to help them.
Thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you listening. And hopefully, if I can touch one person's life, this was all worth it.
I'm certain you will. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more on Farm Connections.
Farm Connections, best practices, brought to you by
Hi, I'm Ryan Miller, Crops Extension Educator with the University of Minnesota Extension, and this is today's Best Practices segment. Well, we're getting late in the year here. We're out scouting some soybeans. They're in the reproductive stage. So we thought we'd take a little bit of time today to talk about best practices around defoliating insects. And there's one particular insect out here today that's causing some damage to the soybean plants, and that's the Japanese beetle. They're small, probably about the size of a dime, dark color, and then they kind of have a metallic green-orange appearance. Very easy to identify when you're out in the field. But these pests do cause some foliar damage. They feed on the leaves. In this field, they tend to be pretty distributed throughout the field, but then they kind of aggregate on individual plants in feed. So they're not completely uniformly distributed, but they are out here. And so soybean defoliators, there's kind of three different thresholds for defoliating insects. First is those early vegetative stages. We can tolerate more leaf loss at those stages. Now that we've moved into the reproductive stages, the tolerance for loss goes down. Early in the season, we can get 30% defoliation before we need to institute a control measure to control that insect and stop it from feeding. When we get to these later reproductive stages, we can tolerate only 20% defoliation. And so it's human nature to kind of overestimate foliar damage of the soybeans. And so what we're going to do is take a look at a plant. Our general recommendation would be on a field to look at 10 plants. If you're on a very large farm, you're going to need to look at more than 10 plants, but typically you can look at 10 plants and get away with that. Actually see some beetles on this, and normally I would move throughout the field and pick another random plant out here, but for the cases here to explain kind of what we're looking for, we can see the beetles are going to now fly away from this leaf here, but we're looking at this top leaflet or set of leaflets, and you can see there is some damage here, and it's not very high. There may be you know, 5 to 10% leaf loss on this particular leaf. When you look at all 3 leaflets, it's probably closer to 5%. But again, if we go down into the mid canopy, select off another leaf, we can see there's 0%. And if we go down the lower canopy again, we're not going to see any damage. So if we were going to sample all the plants in this field and kind of come up with an estimate of defoliation, I'm sure we'd be at or just below 5% defoliation in this particular field. So again, it would not warrant a control measure. Other things to think about when we're trying to decide, if we do cross that defoliation threshold and decide to make a treatment, the thing to consider is pre-harvest interval, to choose a product that's not going to put us out of our desired harvest window because we have to wait longer than we'd like to do the harvest. So we've got to pay attention to that when we get later in the season here. So one last thing to think about when we're talking about some of the insects that cause defoliation damage, and there are a handful of insects we have in Minnesota that can feed on the pods and cause some damage there. And so we've got to be considerate of that, to look for damage to the pods. We don't have any of those pests out here, but things like bean leaf beetle, stink bugs, as well as grasshoppers can actually cause some damage to the pods. Bean leaf beetle can spread a virus. So those are some things to consider too when we're out evaluating late season insects or in the reproductive stage, to kind of limit damage to the pods. And generally the kind of rule of thumb there is to have to institute some kind of control when you have 10% damage to pods. So pay attention. I know in some places in Minnesota this year it's been drier. They might be seeing some damage to pods from things like grasshoppers. Again, in this field, if we looked around, our pods are intact. It's been just primarily that defoliation on the upper canopy here in these soybeans. I'm Ryan Miller, Crops Extension Educator with the University of Minnesota Extension, and this has been today's Best Practices segment.
Today we have with us Sarah Hart from ABC Drones. Welcome, Sarah.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. You started a company. What's it all about?
Yeah, so me and my siblings, my 2 older sisters and my brother-in-law, we started it's kind of unique, a spray drone business out over in Elgin, Minnesota.
So how long have you been in business, Sarah?
Yeah, so we just started business in January, so we're pretty new, but we're really excited. We think that we're at the cutting edge of new technology, specifically in agriculture.
Well, sometimes people sit down and say, this is what we're going to do on Friday night or for the weekend, but maybe you sat down with your siblings and said something different. How did that unfold?
Yeah, so we kind of so me and my dad, actually, we went to Beck's Field Day, and we saw the spray drone there, and we were kind of just, this is a really cool tool. What could we do with it? And so my dad started thinking like, oh my word, we could spray, 4 times in 1 year if we want to. We could do micronutrients. We could spray early in the morning or in the evening. So our wheels started turning, and we were like, you know what, we think this is the future. And sometimes it's hard to get a helicopter in and be timely with him because he has a lot of things going on. So we were like, you know what, let's just give us a shot. And here we are today. So
why is this technology important to your farm and to agriculture?
Yeah, so right now we use a helicopter to spray fungicides, which is great. They do a great job. We kind of want to be able to put ourselves in control over our crops, such as spraying multiple times. We could spray early in the morning when the dew's on it. Like, what if we put some fungicides on it when the crop's more at its rest point? We think it'll be able to absorb a lot easier in the morning. We also think spraying multiple times at different growth periods with micronutrients can really pay off come fall time, just giving it that little extra boost. It can also come with a seed spreader, which is kind of a unique feature to it. That way you can do CRPs, cover crops, those kind of things. My dad hates driving over his crop. He doesn't want to wreck it. He planted it. So this is kind of a cool tool to use. That way you don't have to drive over your crop as much, but you can still get just as much done with them.
Sarah, as we watch sprayers and tractors move across the field, usually those apparatuses are very large and they're carrying a huge volume of water, meaning weight. This has an advantage probably on soil compaction reduction?
Yes. Yep. Like for us, my dad's going to be using his ground rig when the crops are smaller, when the crop gets to be about the height that it is now, getting close to fall time. He doesn't want to run it over. So we think that using the spray drones, we can spray over the top without having, like you said, the soil compaction with it.
With the downdraft from the props, does that help us spot or place the chemicals where they should be?
Yeah, we've been really impressed with it. So the spray drone, they recommend flying about 10, 12 feet above canopy and then 10, 12 miles an hour. So it's pretty slow. And it actually will wash it. It'll move about half a corn stalk just with the propeller wash.
How can you get enough volume on with a small tank on the drone?
Yeah, so the biggest one that we offer is 5.8 gallons. It'll do about 28 acres an hour at a gallon per acre rate. We think that we can use them and be very effective with them. And the reason why is you can actually swarm them. So you could run up to 4 at one time if you really wanted to, right off of a laptop. So it's really easy. You just map your area, you set your speed, your rate, your height, you press go, it'll take off. When it runs low on battery or product, it'll give you a notification and come right back. We think for us, we're going to be able to swarm 3 of them, do about 76 acres an hour, hopefully get about 500-600 done in a day. We think that'll make it really efficient.
What will you use as a supply vehicle?
Yeah, so we have a car hauler utility trailer right now. We got about an 800-gallon water tank right in the middle, and we think that'll be able to get us, the water that we need, and then be able to put chemical products in the back of it.
Traditionally, we have large tanks moving across the field with large volumes of water and chemicals in them. This has a very small tank. How can we put small or minute quantities on the crop and still get the same results?
Yeah, so with herbicides, those would be more of your large quantity gallons of acres and product. So those would be about 10, 15, 20 gallons an acre. And so for this, the drone wouldn't really be beneficial for farmers unless they want to fill it up multiple times. With micronutrients and fungicides, those are a couple ounces to the gallon. So we think that way we'll be able to use it properly and multiple times and get the maximum 28 acres an hour out of it.
So you must be using something like GPS, global positioning systems, to monitor how the equipment's working and also track it?
Yes. Yep. It comes with GPS. It has a lot of redundancies just for safety. It also has a remote controller, and then it can also come with an RTK system, which is really beneficial for farmers just to make sure that it's exactly where you want it to be.
So with RTK, do you set up a tower in the field?
Yep. It can come with comes with a little, it looks a lot like a camera tripod, and you'll just set it in the field and then attach it to or connect it to your laptop.
So there's your reference point for the passing across the field. Does it also map?
So what we do is we have a little small drone, and so we'll take that small drone, we can map the area that way, and then we can upload KML or shape files to the drone software for the spraying and then do it that way. Right now, the camera on the spray drone isn't that advanced to be able to pick up weeds or those kind of things.
And so let's imagine you've got a spot in the field or a specific location that needs help, not the entire field. How does the drone help?
Yeah, so the spray drone can come with spot spraying. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the little Autel, which is a company that we use with our photography and field scouting drones. So we'd take it out there first, map the area. We'd probably circle on the map the specific areas that we think need to be addressed. We can upload that right to the drone, and then from there we can map the area that we want sprayed, and then the drone will go out there and spray it for us.
Sometimes we hear of helicopters or crop dusting airplanes hitting power lines or trees. How does your equipment adjust and maneuver around those things?
Yeah, so it has obstacle avoidance on it, which is really beneficial. It'll actually, if it detects something, it'll come up and stop. It'll give you notification saying, hey, obstacle in the way. You'll have to manually maneuver it. One thing that's nice with the drones too is they'll actually stay in the field. So you'll be able to map your area and then it'll stay in those boundaries, which will make it a lot nicer than having to fly up and over power lines, which I believe can be really scary for pilots.
Why do you think young people should study agriculture and stay involved in agriculture today?
Yeah, I think agriculture is growing. I think that there's a lot of opportunities for young people to come in, such as, using drones. I think technology is advancing at a speed that young people can be able to, see what's going on in the innovations and the excitement and, tractors. We went to a farm show and they have autonomous grain carts where nobody's driving it. I mean, it's just so exciting what possibilities are out there and what people can do with it if they really want to spend the time learning about how farmers feed America.
Do you have a website so we can learn more about your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's abcdronesllc.com. And on there, we have a lot of just videos, pictures, information about who we are, where we're going to be, upcoming demos, upcoming farm shows. And then also an email address in case somebody wants to reach out would be abcdronesllc@gmail.com.
Sarah, thanks so much for sharing today and keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Stay tuned for more on Farm Connections. These have been rough times. Plans have changed, events canceled, life rearranged. It's in this time that we need to make sure we are looking out for one another. Check on your neighbors, check on your friends, check in with loved ones. Take a moment to say hi. At the end of the day, we're all in this together, connected. I'm Dan Hoffman. Thanks for watching Farm Connections.